The last purple team exercise went great, at least on paper. The red side found some clever paths, the blue side caught a few of them, and everyone walked away with a thicker playbook and a glossy report in a shared drive. Yet, months later, the same incident patterns are showing up in your reviews. Change what the organization funds, how it accepts risk, or how it designs systems.
That gap is what this Wednesday headline feature from Bare Metal Cyber magazine, developed by Bare Metal Cyber, is really about. Purple teaming can be sport, or it can be statecraft. Sport is about keeping score and showing skill. Statecraft is about shaping the environment so different decisions become possible and then likely. When leaders treat purple teamwork as statecraft, the core questions shift from did we win the exercise to what did this change about our posture, our roadmaps, and our risk appetite?
Most organizations still talk about purple teaming as a technical war game. Red and blue agree on rules of engagement, walk through a scenario, and then judge success on whether certain alerts fired or certain playbooks ran. That language is comfortable for engineers, but it is shallow as a lever for real change. A better question to start with sounds more like, what assumption, priority, or pattern of spending should move if this exercise is successful? Maybe it is the assumption that every customer-facing service must be directly on the internet. Maybe it is the quiet belief that old identity systems can linger untouched for one more year.
Once you frame it that way, purple teaming becomes a probe into the system, not just the controls. You are testing how the organization reacts when someone forces a hard trade-off into the open. You are exploring who really has the authority to make changes, who feels the impact of bad choices, and where friction lives. A useful engagement might surface a weakness that everyone already suspected, but it will package that weakness in a way that a chief information security officer, a chief technology officer, or a product leader cannot ignore. The exercise creates shared facts that are strong enough to stand up in rooms where strategy and money are actually decided.
Designing the exercise around real choices is the next step. When purple teams are scoped around coverage, they tend to produce scattered findings that are hard to connect to a specific decision. A tighter approach starts from a live dilemma and works backward. If you are debating whether to consolidate identity providers, the scenario focuses on how current sprawl, brittle access rules, and privilege creep can be abused. If you are weighing a push into external AI copilots, the scenarios trace how sensitive data moves into prompts, plugins, and third-party services. Every move is chosen because it sheds light on an option the business is genuinely considering, not because it makes for an impressive kill chain diagram.
That decision-centered design also changes how you define success. Before the engagement, you agree on what evidence of risk will look like in a way that is legible beyond security, which assets become reachable, which controls are bypassed, which comforting assumptions about monitoring or response do not hold up under stress. The goal is to emerge with a small set of concrete, well-documented outcomes that make a decision sharper. Stay the course and accept these exposures, or fund and prioritize the changes that would close them. When you get that right, a purple team feels less like a test and more like a rehearsal for the choices leaders will soon have to make anyway.
To support those choices, you need evidence, not anecdotes. People love to tell hallway stories about how the team pivoted from a forgotten service account into production in 10 minutes. Stories like that are memorable, but they are hard for a chief information officer or a portfolio leader to use. What they need are artifacts that can travel into planning meetings and stand on their own. Timelines that show how long an attacker operated before anyone could meaningfully intervene. Maps that connect each step of the scenario to specific controls, teams, and systems. Simple decision trees that show where different choices might have prevented escalation. The best of these artifacts are a little boring, and that is a feature. A one-page narrative that walks through the scenario in business-ready language. A diagram that highlights just 3 or 4 leverage points where architectural choices matter. A summary that clearly links the exercise to existing risk statements or regulatory expectations.
These pieces make it possible for people who will never read a log line to debate the implications. They also make it more likely that, months later, when a similar issue arises in a steering committee, someone pulls up those purple team results as a shared reference, instead of asking for another ad hoc opinion.
Of course, artifacts by themselves do not move budgets or change roadmaps. Purple team outputs need bridges into governance. Too often, reports are delivered as if they are the end of the story. The real work is mapping each significant finding to a forum that already exists. If a scenario exposes identity weaknesses with broad blast radius, that is not just a ticket for security engineering. It is input to the risk committee that owns privileged access appetite, or the steering group that manages cloud platform standards. By framing findings as questions for those specific bodies to answer, you weave the exercise into the way the organization already makes decisions. Ownership and budget authority sit at the heart of those bridges. When action items land generically on security, they tend to become tuning tasks and documentation updates. A statecraft mindset demands clarity about who owns the systems that were exercised and who can shift money or priorities. That might mean tying remediation to a specific platform team's roadmap, adding a new check to an architecture review process, or elevating a risk to a horizon where it must be explicitly accepted or mitigated. When those connections are spelled out, purple teamwork stops being a side story and becomes one of the inputs that shapes what gets built, fixed, or delayed.
None of this works if the culture turns every finding into a personal indictment. Many teams carry scars from earlier audits or red team engagements, where weaknesses led to career damage rather than system improvement. In that environment, the safest response is to participate as little as possible, control the narrative, and avoid surprises. Leaders have to break that pattern on purpose. If a CISO, a CTO, or head of engineering uses purple team results to score political points or shift blame, people learn quickly that honesty is expensive. If instead, leaders treat uncomfortable findings as a sign that the system is being examined honestly, and they protect teams that own and fix problems, the organization starts to lean into the work rather than away from it. Incentives need to align with that story. When a platform team takes on technical debt and delivery risk to fix issues surfaced by a purple team, that trade-off has to be recognized. If their only reward is criticism for missed feature timelines, others will notice. When leaders explicitly support scope changes, extensions, or reprioritization to pay down security debt, and when they say so out loud, the signal is powerful. Over time, the real heroes in the program become the teams that confront the hardest findings and reshape their designs, not the ones that happen to look clean because nobody has looked closely. Finally, there is the question of cadence and metrics. A one-time, high-profile purple team can wake people up, but it will not keep an organization in motion. Statecraft relies on continuity. That does not mean constant exercises that burn everyone out. It means a steady rhythm, aligned with planning cycles and major changes. A few well-designed engagements each year, each tied to a major theme like identity modernization, cloud transformation, or AI adoption, can build a narrative over time about how the organization is reshaping its attack surface. The metrics you choose tell people what matters. Counting scenarios, findings, or hours spent is easy and almost meaningless. More useful signals include how many purple team-derived risks end up funded versus accepted, how often exercise artifacts are referenced in governance meetings months after the fact, and whether incident patterns shift in areas that have already been exercised. You can also pay attention to qualitative signs, like how willing teams are to volunteer as primary subjects, or how frequently leaders themselves ask for purple team input on upcoming decisions. When those numbers and behaviors move, you know the program is acting more like statecraft than sport. In the end, Purple Team Statecraft is about using exercises as one of your most flexible tools for aligning security posture with business reality. You can point it at legacy identity sprawl, fragile third-party dependencies, or emerging AI workflows. and you can tune each engagement to illuminate the specific choices that matter in the next year. A simple test, before you approve the next exercise, is to ask which real decision it is meant to inform, and how the resulting evidence will reach the people who own that decision. When those answers are clear, the odds that the work leads to actual change go up sharply, and purple teaming earns its place as a core instrument in your leadership toolkit, rather than just another impressive show.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.